Yeah, I went and looked at an 8-room hotel in Taos last week.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're on the hunt for a place of your own.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if the opportunity is there, I don't want to say no, but the guy has it overpriced.
Okay. Are you allowed to talk about it on here?
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay,
I
cool.
mean, where he's at like 235,000. We want to be at like 235 a unit, 250. Like that's where the guys I talk to feel comfortable for indoor hospitality space, and he's significantly over that right now. So
Well, we should probably get going with the intro kind of stuff. I guess we'll say hello and welcome back to the Unique Hospitality Podcast. Still getting used to that new name. Still not sure whether I like it or not really, but we'll go with it for now. We're joined by, as you just heard there, a different co-host today, but a familiar voice, Jacob Halverson, from Bishop's Lodge Auberge Resorts. We've had two really fun episodes with Jacob in the last few months, including last week. So you don't have to go far back to hear Jacob's story and thoughts and ideas on hospitality. And we thought it'd be a great idea to bring him on as a co-host today. Connor can't do every week, so we are going to mix the co-hosts up a little bit. And given today's guest, I thought it'd make sense. But first of all, Jacob, how are you feeling about being stepping up the ranks from guest to co-host?
I am thrilled beyond belief. I mean, the millions of listeners that I get to speak to for this episode is like really exciting to me. No, of course, I'm a big fan of you and Connor, and anytime that I can talk shop is like really exciting. So yeah, thanks for having me. Our guest today is a stellar human being, an entrepreneur, and just like man about town, the internet town. So yeah, I think this is a very good episode to be on because I'm a big fan of our guest today.
Yeah, and that guest is a returning guest, Zach Busekrus. It's hard to think of an intro because he's got so many things going on, which sounds a bit familiar, actually. I think, to start with, he was a former professional Airbnb traveler, but now known as the host of the Behind the Stays podcast, which is much superior to this one, in my opinion, and the founder of Stay Watch, which is like flight watch for Airbnbs. So we'll get on to all of that later. But Jacob, you know Zach, right?
Yeah, I know Zach. I was on Behind the Stays and got to speak about the outdoor hospitality world and Glamping 101 for that. So um, I was really honored. And yeah, he's just like us. He's a hospitality nerd. He's on the trends. He's making it happen with the pods. And yeah, just like a really easy interview, as we will see, hopefully. And yeah, just a really good radio voice too.
Yeah. He's a really good host. Like I'm not. I don't think I'm a natural host. Like, I'm not smooth enough, but he is very smooth. And as you said, he's a very nice guy as well. So he's makes it very easy to get involved in the conversation.
No, Nick, you're a good host too. I mean,
Uh,
it's all family.
yeah,
But yeah, I really like Stay Watch. I like the idea. I'm interested to get into that with him to see how it's going. The business evolves and where it was to where it is now, and yeah, really excited.
yeah. And we're talking about Airbnbs. Obviously, this podcast has been built on glamping, really, and obviously with the name change, there's maybe a little bit of a broadening of the church, I suppose, and we're focusing a little bit more on Airbnbs and non-glamping unique stays as well as glamping. Still trying to figure out the sweet spot, really, because we do want to kind of broaden the audience whilst also retaining the core one and hopefully providing value. But I think, whether we're talking Airbnbs, glamping, unique stays, it's all applicable to a glamping project, to any kind of hospitality project, because it's all hospitality. I know you can speak to that, obviously, Jacob, having worked in hotels, but if you listen to last week's episode, you gave an incredible amount of value for any glamping operator. And Zach will be the same, having stayed at hundreds of Airbnbs, studied thousands of Airbnbs, and he knows what hospitality is, and those principles run true regardless of the specifics of the project that we're talking about.
Yeah, we started a phrase of the day here for us, and so today's phrase of the day is service is black and white, but hospitality is color. So there we go.
Was it you that came up with that?
No.
Hey Zach, how's it going?
Hey guys, I am so sorry for being a little bit late here. How are you guys?
We're good. We're excited to have you on.
Yes, likewise. Thank you guys for making the time. I'm excited to see you both co-hosting this podcast. It's good to see you, Jacob. It's been a while. I've talked to Nick a little bit more recently than I've talked to you, but good to see your face again.
Yeah, no, I just said we're super stoked. I said it's like how do we get all my favorite people in the hospitality space into one room? Nick and Connor will do it, no problem.
Just to kick things off for anyone who has the cheek not to listen to the previous episode that you came on, which was probably, I don't know, 6, 9 months ago, just give us a bit of a recap of your background and how you kind of got into this Airbnb world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a growth marketer by trade, and I actually built a niche media company in a totally different sector, actually in higher education marketing. And that was awesome. Did that for a while. But during COVID, actually, my wife and I were living in a small, very small apartment in Washington, D.C. And like many people, we were both working from that small apartment, and it was like, this isn't working. We had just gotten married like a couple months before, and we decided, hey, like, what if we like broke our lease and did the whole like Airbnb hop-in digital nomad thing? And so we were able to do that, and we got in the car and we said, okay, we've got the next 2 weeks planned, and we beyond that, we have no idea like where we're gonna go and where we're gonna stay, and we're just gonna figure it out as we go. And it was a very like, spontaneous adventure. And we had the opportunity along the way to realize if we could be flexible with where we went, where we stayed, and how long we stayed, we could actually score really incredible deals on really cool, unique experiences. So what we would do is we would just like DM like a host and say, like on Airbnb, and say, hey, like we noticed your property's still free. It's Wednesday. It's free for check-in from Friday through Thursday of next week. Like, any chance you'd have us if we paid this per night instead of, this per night? Or instead of that per night, I should say. And we like 65-70% of the time, the host would just be like, yeah, like, let's do this. Like, it's not booked. I don't think it's going to book before Wednesday or before Friday. So it's yours. Or they'd say, hey, let's give it 24 hours. And if still no one's booked, yeah, we can honor that special deal for you. And so it was, granted, right, this was like in late 2020, early 2021. So one, there was a ton of supply coming onto the market for the first time, right, or I should say onto the platform Airbnb for the first time. And then two, people were still kind of like feeling the COVID effects of not everyone was traveling, right? Like there was a lot of supply, demand was starting to come back, but it hadn't like really, come back quite yet. So I think it might be a little bit hard to do that today, but anyways, we did that. We realized there was opportunity to maybe share these deals that we were finding with other people. So we started a newsletter. We started sending these deals out. Along the way, I started meeting so many incredible people who were hosting us, and I said, hey, let's do like a human interest style like podcast to share their stories and how they got into hospitality. Since I love podcasts and had previously hosted several. And yeah, so like that's how it all started, was this, very, spontaneous road trip. We were on the road for about a year and a half. We stayed in close to 100 different Airbnbs during that time and really fell in love with travel and hospitality. And long story short, was able to grow our company to a point where I could, leave the day job. We actually sold in Rollify, which was my previous niche media company, so that we could do this full time. So that is the very, very long story, very, very shortly.
That has presumably evolved into Staywatch.
It has, yes, yep. So yeah, I used spontaneous twice in my story, totally intentionally, because our business was first called Spontaneous, and we just recently, actually, in about a month ago, rebranded to Staywatch because spontaneous is really hard to say, it's really hard to spell, and when you're a bootstrapped startup, you need people to know how to say and spell your name. So we did go through that like painful work of rebranding, but it's been really cool to see how people have responded to it. And quite frankly, the name Staywatch is much more conducive and accurate with what our product actually does.
I feel your pain very much with Glampy Tech. Everyone calls it Glampy Tech. But just tell us a little bit about what Staywatch actually is.
Yeah, so Staywatch is the best place to find awesome last-minute deals across Airbnb, Vrbo, and Booking.com. So basically how it works, and this is new positioning, so I'm going to try it out on you guys. You let me know what you think.
I'm into the pitch. I'm so into it. Yeah.
Okay, you're into the pitch? Yes, awesome. So basically, right, if you know anything about startups, you know anything about internet startups, you know anything about scraping right? There's how all these OTAs work, right? Many of them, anyways. They go and they find deals, they find inventory, they find supply elsewhere, and then they bring them on board to their site. If you're on Airbnb, you go as a host, you create a listing, right? And that listing shows up on the OTA. But many other listing sites actually just do a lot of scraping. So they'll scrape Airbnb and Expedia and Booking, and they'll bring those essentially those stays onto their platform. So what I like to say about Staywatch is we're sort of like a very, very like micro very, very hyper personalized scrape. So Nick could go and say, hey, I want to go to Big Sky, Montana sometime next July. I'm flexible with when. I want to spend between $200 and $400 a night at a place. It's going to be me and two of my buddies. So, at least 3 bedrooms. And basically from there, every day, if he wants, Nick will get a personalized email that goes and scrapes Airbnb, Booking, and Vrbo and brings Nick the stays that match his travel preferences, right? That matches his search criteria. And so we do that at scale, right? So we've got about 20,000 subscribers who have created trips. They're watching for deals across platform. And what subscribers like about it is, rather than having to go to each OTA every day, right? And just like look for a place to stay. Some people love that. Other people hate it. Even if you love it, it can be a lot of work, right? And you don't need to book anytime soon, right? The trip isn't until next July. So basically what Staywatch does is it helps bring you a highly curated list of stays to your inbox every day that you can book when you're ready. And if you find a deal that you like, you can just go ahead and book it directly. We do send folks to the platform, so you don't book through Staywatch. So we're not an OTA, but if you're a host partner of ours, we'll send the user to your direct booking website rather than sending them to the OTA. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do.
I'm sold.
Yeah, totally. I also think like it would be cool for like industry guys like us or gals or whoever wants to, like for me, like I know that I'm gonna probably vacation in April, right? Just given my personal occupancy and flow. And I think a lot of folks that are like in the hospitality industry have like, okay, it'll probably be like February, March, April, somewhere in that timeline when I can get away. I think travel planning for us is a little bit different, right? We kind of know what season we can get away in. So like I'm definitely going to start using it because that's how my brain works is like, okay, somewhere between March and April, I could probably buy 10 days, and like I want to maybe explore. Is this US destinations right now, Zach, or is this also international?
It's anywhere that there's an Airbnb or Vrbo listing. So it's very international. We've got actually one of our like 10th most popular destination right now is Paris, France. Maybe
Why?
because of the Olympics, right? But yeah, it's definitely international. And if you look at our data, it's a lot of the big travel destinations you'd expect. We get a lot of Florida, right? Definitely a lot of like Myrtle Beach, the Carolina beaches during the summer. But it's also really interesting to see we have this feature where you can just watch a destination. So you could literally put in any town, any city, any zip code in the world, and you could just get deals around that location that aren't necessarily bound by a specific price point or a specific set of dates, if that's something that you cared about. So maybe Jacob, you just like, I don't know, love Northern California, and you really love you just want to be notified anytime there's like a great deal in that area of the country. You could just watch a destination and then get notified of deals that pop up in that specific place. So that's another feature that exists outside of actually like planning a specific trip.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I just want to clarify as well, when we're talking about Airbnbs here, I think because we're so deep in the industry, we know, for example, Airbnb the company is making great efforts to branch into kind of unique stays and have different categories now rather than just listings. But I think some people maybe think of Airbnbs as just like a functional house that you book if you need to stay somewhere on a work trip, for example. But Zach, your real interest really is in the kind of unique stay side of Airbnb, right? So kind of what interesting what interesting destinations are on Staywatch or on Airbnb that kind of really get you going? Is it glamping? Is it the kind of boutique hotel space? What kind of escapes are we talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, Staywatch in particular, you can because we are just scraping like the big OTAs, you'll get everything, right? Like I'm actually trying to filter out right now. We're trying to work on like just removing anybody that has just like a bedroom in their home that they list. Because sometimes, right, like if someone's budget, right, is smaller, for example, like we'll get users that'll send us emails like, why are 5 of the listings out of the 10 in my email were for like a room in somebody's house? Like that's disgusting. And it's like, well, actually, that's how Airbnb was built. Like Airbnb's like big pitch to the market, right, is like rent out the unused space in your primary residence. Like that is actually what they're all about, right? At least at their founding. So you definitely get everything that you'll find, right, across all platforms. And candidly, right, some of the best deals, right, in terms of like from a monetary perspective, right, are more average stays, quite frankly, right? Like, that said, what we see that's really, really cool and what gets me excited is people that have built really incredible glamping destinations, people that have built really incredible, like architecturally, like stunning spaces. They're usually booked, right? But then, sometimes on a Tuesday night, they're free, right? And so you'll see some of these property managers, you'll see some of these owners that operate these really unique spaces drop their prices like upwards of 40-50% per night because they're trying to fill a random Tuesday and they're booked out for the weekends for the rest of the year. But like, and they're booked for $1,000 a night, $800 a night or whatever on the weekend. But, not everyone wants to come for like a one night stay on a Tuesday to, Fredericksburg, Texas. And so they'll dramatically drop their pricing for midweek stays that are 1 to 2 nights. And so it's really cool. What gets me really excited is when I see a deal that we find on Stay Watch that's like, oh, this, crazy treehouse normally rents for $800 a night, but you can get it for $400 a night if you book it like, today. So that's the kind of stuff that I really get excited about. Obviously, my podcast, I get to talk to incredible people like both of you who are really building in this space, who are operators in this space, who are fundraising to build incredible concepts in the space. I do think that unique stays are the future of hospitality. I think they're the future of short-term rentals. They're clearly where Airbnb thinks things are going. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dramatically overhauled their entire search experience to prioritize these unique stays. So it's really, really exciting time, I think, to be in hospitality, specifically folks that are building differentiated experiences for travelers.
Do you have a property on your subscribe algorithm for your personal algorithm that you're like, hey, babe, if this drops before, 20% and we're taking a trip, like, is there one sitting in the back of your head?
That's a really good question. So there is this like Instagram famous like cave house. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I think it's literally called the Cave House. It's by Dunlap Hollow. They're an incredible operator in the space, owner operator. I think they've built most of their stays themselves. They've got 3 or 4 stays. They're in Hocking Hills. The Hocking Hills, like I always talk about Fredericksburg, Texas, and then or maybe I should say the Texas Hill Country a little bit more generally, and then Hocking Hills, Ohio, because those 2 places are like the meccas of unique stays. Like there are more unique stays in the Texas Hill Country and in Hocking Hills, Ohio than anywhere else in the world. Like I'm convinced of this. I don't actually have the data to back me up, but like I look through this stuff all the time, and in terms of just like the per capita of unique stay given sort of the area, I'm convinced that those 2 markets have to be the highest. But the Cave House is literally like Amy and Bryant from Dunlap Hollow. They literally like built a stunning home into a cave. And Levi Kelly, who is an incredible Airbnb creator. If you aren't following him already, you should go watch his YouTube stuff. I had him on my show, and he said that that's actually the of all the places he's been in, he's been to hundreds of stays. It's like that's his favorite place. Like it's just so novel. It's just so unique. So definitely what I would say to my wife is like, okay, if the Cave House ever becomes available at a price we can afford, it could be a 3% discount for all I care, right? We're going to the Cave House.
Yeah, I can see why there's such a demand, such a big supply in Texas Hill Country with there's very lax, if any, zoning laws, and obviously you're close to like Austin, which has got quite a techie crowd, and I think there's a bit of correlation there. But I'm interested to know why Ohio is such a popular unique stay place.
I think it's also because land is still relatively cheap, and actually what you'll hear from the folks in Ohio is that there's not a lot and the same thing is actually true of Texas, right? There's not a lot of like beautiful places in Texas. There's not a lot of beautiful places in Ohio. The Hocking Hills is this like massive, beautiful state park. I think it's maybe going to be a national park. It's the rumors I've heard. It could be turned into a national park. I don't know how that actually works, but like Hocking Hills are these beautiful hills, these beautiful cliffs. When you're walking around there, you really can't believe that you're in Ohio, right? Like Ohio doesn't have like mountains, right? And so I think in the Texas Hill Country, right? Texas is obviously very dry, it's very flat. Texas Hill Country is like the only like decently like nice place in Texas if you want a nature experience.
You're going to get some angry Texans phoning you up now. Go to behind the stage, not here.
Yeah, yeah. But anyways, yeah, and right, like the Texas Hill Country, right? You've got Texas Hill Country, you've got Austin, you've got San Antonio. It's like I don't know, 3 maybe 4 hours from Dallas, which is a long drive, but like you could do it. Like it is, it's very central.
Dallas Mark drives. They'll get in their car. They don't have a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, they will drive. And with Hocking Hills, right? You've got Columbus, you've got Cincinnati. It's like 45 minutes from Columbus, Ohio. So it's like right outside of the city. You could literally still go into the city, have like a nice dinner, and then come back to Hocking Hills. So that must have something to do with it.
Yeah, I think also the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in both of those places. If you look at Columbus and Cincinnati, and Ohio is a hotbed of tax breaks and also like real estate developers. I mean, like I've met more guests from Ohio in the last like 2 months than probably 2 years, to be honest with you. And like when I'm speaking with these guests, like they're very entrepreneurial, they're very committed to community, all of the things that are important to the outdoor space or the unique stay space, the community building, the representation of what this area represents to the greater good. Those are those are important characteristics to the people that live in those places. So I'm not like Ohio, I feel like there's just more to come. And, I think it's just at the beginning of what Ohio will look like in the next 5 years, to be honest.
My some good friends of mine, Christine and Kimball, from the cliffs at Hocking Hills, they've also built like they're sort of known as the if you guys have seen this on Instagram, they build waterfalls. So like they're known as like the waterfall Airbnb people. And what's funny about that is like they've never listed on Airbnb. Like they've been booked direct from the beginning. And there's a really funny story that you guys should, if you have the opportunity to chat with them at some point, you should definitely get them on the podcast, because that whole story of why they're not on Airbnb is just a really funny one. And it's nothing against Airbnb as the company or the platform. It's a really cool story. But what Kimball and Christine will tell you, Jacob, is that they try to tell everybody that they meet around the world that they have to come to Ohio. They say Ohio is like the next San Diego. And I'm like, what? Like, no, it's not. And they're like, no, Zach, you don't understand. Like there's a lot of innovation happening. It's still relatively affordable place to live. There are great cities. There's a good food season, a good food scene that's like really emerging. And you do have like the ability to quickly, it's very centrally located, so you can hop, and airports are decent, so you can hop around as you need. And so anyways, everyone I've met from Ohio, it's like Minnesota. Like the people that you meet from Minnesota can't stop talking about why Minnesota is like the best state ever. Ohio is the same thing. The people that you meet in Ohio, like they're Ohio till they die-o is what they like to say. And so I don't know. Yeah, maybe you're right, Jacob. There's something in the water in Ohio.
No, listen, I went to college in Wisconsin. I have family in Wisconsin. There's a lot of border competition between Wisconsin and Ohio, and that's right. Ohio. The people from Ohio live and breathe it. But yeah, but I do think that that's a true statement. There's a lot of economical development. I think, and also if you want to do something seasonally, why not? Right? Like, because you can bank on the weather in Ohio. It's brick cold in the winter and it's beautiful in the summer with a little bit of humidity. Little tornado watch situation sometime, I think. But yeah, that's awesome. So the Cave House, mark that, listeners, as a must-do straight from the expert's mouth.
I have a question for you both. Starting with Zach. Zach, your life now, or at least your career, is dedicated to hospitality and accommodations. And I want to know really where you think the love of hospitality came from, and what it means to you, and why you take such joy from basically studying it full time.
It's funny you asked that question, Nick, because I was actually thinking about this recently. Thinking about sort of like life through lines, like what are the things that like even as a kid, like you just liked doing, right? And there was no necessarily rhyme or reason. You might not have even like known like why this mattered or like what was cool about this thing, but you just enjoyed doing it. And then like what are those things that have stayed consistent with you as you grew? because there are lots of things that you liked and did as a kid that you just don't like or do now for whatever reason. But then there are these through lines, and I've always really cared about experiences, and what that means to me is I distinctly remember like as a kid being like, okay, hey, when we have people over for dinner, right? Like we need to make sure that like the lights are a little dimmed. I would always ask my mom to like help me light a candle. Like, I'd want to make sure that we had like a focused conversation, which might sound crazy, but like I distinctly remember like never wanting to sit at the kids' table, right? Never ever wanted to be at the kids' table. I wanted to be at the adults' table, and I wanted to like be listening to like what people were talking about, why they were talking about it, and I wanted to cultivate some sort of experience that was conducive to great conversation. And so that has definitely been a through line for me. And so much so like now, like I really care about like space, right? And when you walk in, and I'm not a designer, right? At all. I'm not an interior designer. I don't know the first thing about design. I'm pretty like I think I'm like decently clean. My wife thinks I'm like super messy, but like I think I'm like decently clean. But I'm not like one of those like incredible like OCD dudes who've like kept their dresser drawer perfect since like 10 since they were 10 years old. I've got friends who like are like obsessive like that, like their closets are all organized by color, and they're like straight dudes, but like they have like these just immaculate experience like stuff that they've set up. That's just like that is not me. I wish that was me. It's not. But I've always really, really cared about experiences. And when you walk into a great restaurant, when you walk into a great hotel, right? When you walk into like a beautiful short-term rental, there's a feeling that you get, right? And I think the feeling that you get often is either it's joy, like it's peace, right? It's excitement. And I always love like bringing like my wife to like a nice restaurant because I know, hey, because of the experience that the restaurant has designed, we're actually going to have like a really good conversation. And the kind of we could have the same conversation on our couch at home and it wouldn't feel the same, and we'd probably be upset at each other, and they probably wouldn't like flow the way that I would want it to flow. But literally you just change your environment. That's the only change that you make. You're still tired because your kid was up all night. Like you're still starving. You're still just like, sick of each other kind of. But like for some reason, like when you change that environment, the entire conversation is different. And I think that that's what hospitality ultimately is, right? Hospitality is a facilitator of great environments, right? That inspire people to think or do or speak differently. And so that's, I think, what I love most about this industry is people that work in this space have the opportunity to design these experiences to help people feel a certain way. And it's not necessarily about like making sure like the bed is made or making sure that there's like, a complimentary cocktail waiting for you when you walk into your room. All those things are important and great. But I think ultimately what it really is about is designing a feeling and then watching people experience that feeling and know like everything that we've just done is intentional so that we can solicit that response that you just gave us. And that's what brings me about a lot of joy.
I mean, Jacob's going to have a hard time beating that answer, but I think that was what you said there is so important. We had 2 weeks ago, we had Big Noel Dutson from Open Sky in Zion, which is a really nice glamping site, and he has what he calls a glamping golden hour, and it's just basically he wants people when they arrive at 4 p.m. He does not want them to leave the site that evening, just because that's what you pay for. You turn up, you get the amazing kind of entrance where you get welcomed by the staff there, and then he wants you to be watching the sunset on your first night of your stay. And so all he does, he puts a lot of thought into it, but the main thing is just making sure that there's some kind of food and beverage available for them on the night that they stay, so that they don't have to go off to a restaurant and miss that glamping golden hour, as he calls it. And it's not about throwing things in people's faces. It's just designing something that kind of nudges people in the right direction, that lets them create their own experience within it, rather than kind of saying, here's your experience, deal with it. I think that's kind of very much similar to the kind of point that you were making there.
100%, 100%. Yeah, Jacob, what do you think? I'd love your thoughts. Your answer to Nick's question.
I actually don't even know what hospitality is. I'm kind of just like waiting in this world. No, no. Well, I think it's funny. Like I smirk because like we always say we're not these things, but as you keep doing, you get closer, right? Like you were staying in a lot of Airbnb, so you got very close to operating, but like as the guest, right? Because you're observing and you're like, wait, I think I could do this. Yeah, it's the same thing with design, right? You're like, I always tell people I know enough just to be dangerous, but not enough to actually do anything. But no, I think for me, hospitality is just like it's a little bit of personalization, it's a lot of anticipation and a lot of care, right? And then there's like those three things that kind of make the soup. Like anticipate a guest need, personalize that service, and just like do what you can to instill in the guests that they're going to feel safe and secure and like taken care of. And then those are all emotions, right? And those emotions can be captured through different activities. Like for golden hour, right? Like that's a sense of care, right? Like the guests know like, oh, my basic needs of food and water and shelter are all here, right? So and then he's anticipating that those guests are going to need those needs as they arrive. But what was our phrase of the day? Oh, service is black and white, hospitality is color. You know, so it's just like that's just the flavor of it all. Um, but I'm always like imploring people just to put them in each other's shoes, right? Like if I'm a guest, like I just traveled or I drove and I'm there, and it's like we couldn't control anything up until that guest gets to that doorstep, and that's when the clock starts for us. Like that's when the control comes in, and that's where we can actually like really make things memorable and create these core memories. So just keeping that like in the front of the mind of like that goes back to the experience, the candlelight, the lighting, the music, the sense, like what is happening for that guest. Where in the space, like you should always be thinking about the five senses. You should always be like talking about it, discussing, and like nodding or making that happen for guests. So
we're talking about creating the space for the guests to have their own experience and have for example conversations that wouldn't happen on the couch at home. Is there anything that you can recall in your career, Jacob, that you've done maybe at one of your hotels where you've thought, yes, I've nailed this, I've created that space, and I've kind of potentially had a transformational effect on the guests' lives, almost like with healing relationships?
yeah, I mean, I think I really try to do that. I talked about this on the other pod, but I that really was the driving force behind the colorful life and that Portland projection. Like I really wanted guests to take 10 minutes before they went to bed just to like draw with their partner or draw with themselves or whatever that was, and like add their story to the story of Portland or that staff member. So like I really there's a lot of intentions around just like that 10 minutes, and I think that's also the point of turn down service in a way from traditional hospitality is like your turn down service should really like click the guests into that next part of their night, whatever that is. So like I love the little chocolate on the pillow for turn down, but like should we be feeding our guests like sugar and like before like the expectation is like it's the wind down? So I'd like to start questioning some of these like different phases of traditional hospitality to be like, is that actually meeting the goal? Because I think the goal for turn down should be setting them up for going to bed. I think the goal of stayover service should be acknowledging that we've listened to your request during the stay, or like we've learned something about you and we're going to prove that to you during a little gift or a note of stayover service. So I'd actually think that there's room to challenge these traditional hotel processes to make them more meaningful for a guest. And I hope that that's what we bring to Auberge Resorts Hotel Collection, like that we're listening in real time, and that like we're like acknowledging our guests in real time, that we can make these different aspects of their hotel stay a little bit different. So I think it's a lot of that.
Surely that's the only way that the magic happens, right? Because if you just do what has always been done before, you're never going to do anything different. It's never going to stick in the guest's mind. And surely by challenging traditional kind of methods of hospitality, that's probably where kind of Airbnb came from, where glamping came from. There's probably a better way to do this, and we've just sleepwalked into assuming that this is the only way.
I also think, right, when it comes to experiences, there's like this new there's this new I don't know if it's emergence, right, of like what like the next gen luxury looks like. And I think like next gen luxury is actually maybe the glamping community, quite frankly, is getting this more than anybody else right now. Is like next gen luxury is the idea of being able to be in a beautiful, stunning space, immersed in nature. And I think that like historically, it's really all been about like staying in 5-star hotels. Like that's like the Ritz-Carlton or like the Four Seasons. Like those are sort of like the quintessential examples of 5-star, luxury. You got Amangari, right? Like you've got these examples of these incredible like high-end brands. But I actually think what's happening, right, is there's this new thing that's emerging, which you guys are really focused on, right? Which is, wow, people today really care about being immersed in beautiful spaces, but with all the comforts that they would find at, in a room at least at Four Seasons. And I think that that's really exciting, and I think that that's a direct response to this desire that consumers have for new experiences, right? The future of hospitality, I think, is thinking very creatively about how do you get people who are locked up in their rooms, in their offices, on Zoom calls for 8 to 10 hours a day. How do you get them to be immersed in nature? They're not going to go camping. Maybe some of them will. Most of them won't. But if you can give them an experience that is deeply immersed in nature, but with all the luxuries that they would expect at a nice hotel, they're going to opt for that over the Ritz downtown. Like they will. Like this is where things are going. So I think it's just really exciting to be a fly on the wall and see all the things that you guys are doing.
I saw that at Mendocino Grove all the time. Is like because Mendocino is such a small market, is that like all the rooms were in the same comp set, right? So it didn't
Yeah.
matter if like Mendocino Grove was outdoor hospitality and there was maybe Soul Community Planet just started coming into town, right? So then finally we got some bigger brands kind of in the space, but a lot of it was like you're just choosing between Mendocino Grove or a bed and breakfast in town, right? So it was less. So
Yeah.
then you really got to start to learn what guests are responding to because glamping might have not have been their first choice, right? So there, it was just like a really good learning experience there because, but you're right. That's my job right now at Bishop's Lodge is to like crack that nut. What is new luxury? What does that look like? What is experiences? What are the activities that people are responding to? Like, so I'm in that challenge and I think it'll keep evolving, but I'm less concerned about the white glove, right? Obviously, we want everything to be perfect and we want your room condition to be excellent. We want your service to be timely and as expected. But I feel like my calling in the positioning of this portfolio is that like to get people outside of themselves, right? Zach is just like
Mm,
you had to get outside of your own thought process when you took that journey to like just stay in Airbnbs for a year.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm literally pulling people off of property, be like, come do the stained glass class now. Well, it doesn't sound that exciting. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's because you don't have the soldering iron in your hand. Like, as soon as you have like hot metal and you're like melting stuff, like that's way more exciting. So it's just like, it's hard because for me, we're creating these unique experiences, but participation could be low. So it's like, how do you get
Yeah.
people to
Yeah. Yeah.
participate? I mean, it's the same for you. It's like you want people to participate and stay watch, and I think that's the challenge. Is like getting folks to there is one challenge, but actively participating in the vision that you've crafted for this guest is the other challenge.
And the point about glamping being kind of hotel quality rooms in nature, kind of its core. I think that's what makes me really bullish about the long term future of the industry because there's always questions, particularly post pandemic, of was it a flash in the pan, was it just a trend, and there's always going to be those questions really until it really establishes itself as its own thing. But that's what makes me bullish is because mobile phone use, cell phone use is only going one way. Social media use is only going one way. Computer use is only going one way. People are actively seeking out nature, and even kind of people my sort of age, early to mid 20s, they're going for hikes on the weekend, whereas maybe 10, 20 years ago they would have been playing PlayStation in their room. Like you want that escape, you want to reconnect with nature, and I think that's what makes glamping, unique stays that focus on reconnecting with the natural world so exciting. And I think that's why the industry has got a hell of a lot of runway left, and it's not going to stop anytime soon.
Nick, do you have outdoor school in England?
I don't think so. I've never heard of it.
So outdoor school in the States, which I think like harkens back to this core memory for people, and I think this is why glamping and outdoor hospitality and unique stays, it's like as a third grader, I don't know what grade you do this in. I feel like it's very
I
young,
don't know
but
what grades are. How old's third grade?
Let's see, like as a 10-year-old maybe.
Okay, that'd be like year 4, year 5. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So, but you literally go to like a bunkhouse in this outdoor education campus and you stay there for a week and you're all immersed in like learning about the nature and the terrain and these survival skills. And it's like for so many people that have access to outdoor school, like that memory is your first memory of like vacationing or experiential design because like as a kid, you're like, no, we've designed this experience for you for 5 days. You are going to learn about nature and all things outdoors. And I mean, we called it outdoor school back east, but I think it is something to tap into as far as like core memories for people. But that's like the most like curated design experience that most Americans are exposed to right away.
Well, yeah, I think it comes to people at different ages as well. Because if I'd gone on that outdoor school at 10 years old, I don't think I'd maybe this outdoor program is so amazing that I would have fallen in love with it straight away. But personally, I wasn't particularly outdoorsy. Like I played sport, but I wasn't. If my family suggested going for a walk in the countryside, I would have been fuming. Quite frankly, I had no interest in it whatsoever. But it's only kind of the last couple of years, really 3-4 years, where I spend a lot of time on my laptop working and I don't get it outside as much as I like to. It's when you do, for example, I'll go to the mountains, 3 or 4 hours west of me, like, and you're just able to breathe and look around. And I'm going on a solo camping trip in a couple of weeks just to have that kind of reset. And I think that's come as maybe it's just me getting older and maturing, but also because as a kid, social media, when I was 10, social media didn't really exist for 10-year-olds. But now, you're doom scrolling all the time. So I think there's the sad fact of how much media consumes us today also creates a lot of opportunity and adds a lot of value to like nature-based escapes like glamping.
And what I really think it comes down to is it's just really difficult to think anymore, right? Like it's just there's so many things that are better to do or even worse to do, right? Like but you just can't think. There's no time to think because there's always something pulling at your attention. And I think when you are stripped away from your laptop, right? And or even if Wi-Fi is just a little slower, right? It's a little harder to access, or cell service is there, but it's a little harder to access, right? All of a sudden, you're forced to think. And that's really scary actually for a lot of people. But I think there is something to be said for why when people come back from a vacation, or they come back from some sort of like internet detox, why they often make a big pivot in their life, right? Like whether it's leaving a job, whether it's like getting a divorce, right? Like whether it's actually settling down with your partner, whether it's right deciding, hey, you know what, like screw my boss, like I'm done, right? And just walking away, not even caring anymore. Like there's I can't remember where the study is. I should try to go find it. But like there's some study that talks about how like when people come back from a trip that they say was a relaxing trip, that there's often a life change associated with them upon return. And I really think that today, more so than ever before, the reason for that is just there is no time to think. And so the only time that you have to think is that when you're going out, staying in a really cool glamping structure, immersed in nature. Again, Wi-Fi is there, maybe internet's there, but it's harder to access. And for the first time in maybe years, right, you have to sit with your thoughts. And we should be more reflective as a species. Society would actually be a lot more better if all of us were a little bit more reflective. We're just not. And everything in our lives is working against that. So if you can be in the business of creating opportunities for reflection to happen, you're not just doing something great for people, like you're doing something great for society. And that's, I think, what's super exciting about Unique Stays and glamping. And again, really excited that people like you both are working to actively try to solve this problem for people. It's wildly exciting.
Remember when they used to say like, as your mission statement, you're in the business of, right? Like that was like how you started like mission statements, like I'm in the business of camping. It's just like, it's funny. It's not, it's hard to describe. But I think it's also the outdoor hospitality like gives you such good access to like all the elements, right? Like air, water, fire, it's just like, it's so easy. Like hotel stays don't give you that. Like there's nothing about an interior space that can give you access to natural elements in that same way. I think it's very important. And I think outdoor operators need to lean in on that a little bit more of just like this is what we can do compared to the hotels.
Have you two ever had any experience of a place like there's a glamping cabin company in the UK and Australia called Unyoked, where they I believe they lock your phone in, or you hand your phone in or lock it in a box yourself, so you have no access to the phone for the 2 days that you're there. Now that's a brave move because obviously it's probably cutting off some people who do want their phone. But have you ever had an experience doing anything like that?
I left my phone once for like a week. This is when I was like single and didn't have like children to worry about. But like I left my phone for like a week to go on like a family vacation to Maine actually, like with my extended family. And it was like the best vacation I've ever been on because I literally just had to be present to everything that was happening. And it was really hard. It was so hard. And then you just realize, wow, like 99% of the time I'm just split. And like not just split in one or two ways, but I'm split between checking my email, checking Twitter, like trying to listen to what my wife is saying, trying to respond to my kid, like all these things. We are just split. Our attention is just so fractured. And all of a sudden when you take your devices away, you just reduce the possibility for interruption, at least at the frequency that we're normally used to push notifications, right? And that there is just something wildly uncomfortable, quite frankly, at first, and then magical that happens when you really have to be present to what is right in front of you because you literally have no other option.
I was going to go on this camping trip without my phone, but I am so impractical. I have to Google how to do so many things, and it would be a total disaster if I didn't take it. But I'm going to turn my Wi-Fi off when I don't need it.
Yeah, I no, I have not done an experience like that. I'm not adverse to that, but I've been very fortunate to kind of avoid the social media bug, right? Like being as an operator. I don't think I've mentioned this before, but I was managing hotel Instagram, so I never like felt the need to like develop my own personal social media because I was like the fly on the wall through society's social media and then through Thatcher's and then through Mendocino Grove. So it's just like I was always just like that was my social media. So it was a different vibe, but I definitely for a time there would like feel the false phantom vibrate and like in my pocket, right? Like as the GM because you're like on all the time and you're like getting text messages where it's just like there were nights like in my career where like I swear my leg is vibrating from
Oh,
an alert, where it's just like these
Yeah.
phantom texts and like your heart it has take I've been in this new position for what 112 days, who's counting? But it has taken all 112 of those days to be able to be like, that vibration is not real. Like that's just like it's
Yeah.
all phantom. So it's hard to really disconnect and unwind. Should we ask Zach the famous question of like, what is the glamping structure of choice? Because I loved that question when you guys interviewed me the first time.
as long as it says tubos, it's all right. I'm joking.
Yeah. Yeah, whatever Nick's working on, that one. Yeah, yeah. Um I wish I haven't stayed in that many. Like I obviously am good friends with Ben Wolf, and so I've stayed at several different like units that he's got at Onera. So get the Monarch and the Spyglass. And then I've seen actually I was also in like their safari tents for one trip. But I've never I haven't stayed in like any, to be honest, that I would define as like true like next gen glamping structures beyond those. Um, you know what I think is missing? Here's what I think is missing. I think when it comes to glamping structures, like what's missing is I'd love to see, and this is so hard. I know it's so hard because these structures are small.
Oh, I'm taking notes because if it's gonna get Zach's like endorsement after it's built, I might as well just bank that now.
The kitchen thing, like I know that most of these are designed for like one night, like maybe 2 night stays, and like people aren't gonna be like cooking gourmet meals or whatever. And I totally get that, but I'd love to see someone take on the challenge of like being like, okay, can we do something better than a hot plate? Like is there any world in which we could do a little bit better than a hot plate? And I don't know, like I enjoy cooking, and I think I would be more inclined to stay somewhere a little bit longer if and it doesn't even need to be crazy, but just if it was slightly higher end, right? Like the Italians have like loads of like incredible like kitchen what's the term, appliances. Yeah, like they've got like really like they've got incredibly powered, like very powerful, very small, very chic, like ovens and stoves. And again, that presents a whole other like list of problems. But I want to see a glamping unit that's got a hot take on a kitchen. Like that's what I want to see.
Well, this is I actually saw someone say similar on LinkedIn the other day, where it's like, I've stayed at a ton of glamping spaces, love them all, but one thing that really pisses me off is I like to cook. To me, cooking in the outdoors is part of what makes it great, and there's never been enough accommodation for that. So she's doing her own thing. I forget her name. I do apologize, but she's doing her own site, and she's saying, right, we're going to go big on the cooking. We're going to have a massive like outdoor grill and everything.
Well, that's the thing. A lot of them
Yeah.
don't even have grills, right? And it's like, who doesn't want to get like one of the quintessential like things about camping, at least camping of yesteryear, was like you'd bring your little charcoal grill and like you'd grill the hot dogs like outside or whatever. You can't even grill at most of these places, and that's disappointing.
We bought so many grills at Mendocino Grove, it drove the ownership team crazy. They're like, we just bought grills. And I'm like, yeah, but we're like outside in the salt air. Like, we're going to go through these grills every day. But yeah, we put propane barbecue grills in each neighborhood for the tents, and then each fire pit had a grill grate on it that you could swing over and cook with wood fire. But I think
Nice.
the better answer to that, Zach, is probably like do what the Hoxton hotel brand does, where they just create a whole floor, and that's like the pantry for the guests. So like they have a whole floor. So if you wanted bagels or muffins or like the charcuterie, like all that's complimentary, you just go to that pantry floor and get what you need: milk, cereal, Pop-Tarts, whatever. But I think there is an opportunity for glamping sites to put like a pantry-esque setup that could have kitchen like a little bit more extended, where it would be kind of like as needed. Guests could go in there, use the pantry, use the kitchen, and dedicate some real estate to that.
And I think the way you came up with that idea, Zach, I think there's a good principle behind that as well. Is you've stayed at lots of places, you've got a frustration, and you're like, well, I could do it better. That's how so many general business ideas work, not just glamping. But I think if the audience can take away one thing from that, it's stay at lots of different places, make notes, figure out what you like and what you don't like, and just do what you don't like better. And that's how the experience gets elevated.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, not everyone wants to do more than 1 or 2 nights, right? Meaning, like from a business perspective, that's not the model for a lot of folks. I guarantee you, right? Like if you want to entertain the idea of like, okay, would people stay 3 or 4 nights? Figure out the kitchen, and then you'll unlock something.
It helps the holiday stays. Like it helps at Thanksgiving stay. It helps at Christmas stay. If you're open in the holiday season, it definitely helps that family multi-unit sale too, just from a business perspective. Even if it's 2 nights, at least then they can expand the offering to having more families glamp together.
We've completely gone off the running order, but that's absolutely what I wanted. Zach, I'm presuming you want to kind of head off if 5 p.m. where you are, right? Friday 5 p.m.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I do have to jump. Yeah, I've got to go get my son. But I'm super thankful for this conversation. I love both of you guys. I love what you're doing, and super fun to just kind of riff on all these ideas. And I love what you're doing with the show. I love that Jacob's a part of the show. I'm looking forward to tuning in.
Yeah, and congrats, Zach. I know you briefly slipped in. 20,000 subscribers is not a small feat, my friend. So snap to you.
Oh,
and I think by the time we'll talk next, it'll be at like 50 and then 75. Yeah.
I hope, man.
Start pushing those.
Yeah, in 5 years from now.
Come on, we got like 5 months. Let's do it.
So Zach, I'll give you a chance. Plug Stay Watch for one last time for listeners, because presumably it will be suitable for glamping operators as well.
100%. Yep. If you've listed on any of the OTAs at all, even if you've got direct booking sites, we'd love to have you on as partners. And then if not, if you're just interested in finding cool stays and traveling yourself, you can just go to staywatch.ai or just Google like last minute Airbnb deals. We actually rank #1 for that. So you could just go to staywatch.ai and build a trip, follow a destination, go check out, see what other stays are in your neck of the woods, maybe spy on your competition a little bit.
Thanks, Zach.
Pleasure's all ours. Thank you, guys.